segment with Max Olson. Max Olson joins us most Thursdays at 4. He's joining us on 365 Sports. Max, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul and myself, David Smoak. Your thoughts about Harbaugh and how this might be a pretty simple turnaround for Michigan. Your thoughts about the overall story itself.
Yeah, great to be with you guys as always. I think this is something that we all have seen coming really ever since the day after Michigan won the national title. That and really you could go back to the middle of the season. That it's not surprising that Jim Harbaugh was a lot more serious about pursuing an NFL opportunity. I do think there's the upside piece of it for him of pursuing a Super Bowl and kind of what's that next thing in his career after you've taken Michigan to the mountaintop. And I think there's also the realistic thing of the NCAA is coming after Michigan and on multiple fronts. And so you kind of know you're going to have to deal with that and potentially another suspension here in 24. So I think it made sense to get serious about pursuing a pro opportunity. And, I think for Ward Manuel, I'm not sure. I'm sure that they offered him a very generous contract. I know they came out and said they offered, to make him the highest paid coach in the country. I'm sure they did. But I don't know that there's anything Michigan could have done to get Jim Harbaugh to stay. I think the Chargers' opportunity was just too good to pass up. And, I think especially to be going through this late in the winter here, I'd be surprised if it's anyone but Sherrone Moore for Michigan. I think that's kind of how everybody feels about this situation here. Not that there aren't great coaches out there that are worth looking at. And I think Ward Manuel, the Michigan AD, has probably had a few weeks to really explore what's out there. But I think for Michigan's ability to kind of hold this team together and try to build off it, I think it makes sense. Now we'll see how much Jim Harbaugh takes with him to the pros. And ultimately, can Sherrone Moore build a good staff and really have continuity there? But that seems to be the expectation at this point in time, that they're going to kind of play it safe and go internal hire with somebody who obviously got some reps as the head coach this season.
Yeah, that's probably the best test you could have is the head coach at Michigan is to go beat Ohio State in a very crucial moment for not only you
and win on the road at Penn State too.
Yeah, those things are huge.
Pretty good.
Yeah, those things are huge. Max, are there any what are the at least to you outward drawbacks to not being able to maybe even go and do a head coaching search had Harbaugh left in late November, December like most coaches would?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. I think that you certainly, if you think about the five, kind of the medium long term here, will Michigan look back and say they should have gone out and hired a top coach the way that Alabama just did? There may be some element of that you say, this was our chance. We were on top. We could have gone out and spent big and lured, one of the best out there. But, I think Michigan is very proud of the fact that they won a national championship the Michigan way. And I think that's going to be a big priority here. And certainly for their players who just have a lot of love for Sherrone Moore and who, want to continue to win with him and have another playoff caliber team next year. I think they just don't want to shake things up that much. Now, there's obviously really important parts to that. Can you keep your strength coach? Because he's a huge part of the culture there. If Jim Harbaugh takes them with him, then that kind of changes the culture a little bit, right? There's going to be aspects of that in terms of making this repeatable and sustainable, you've either got to retain some of these really great people that are in your building or go out and really make some great hires. But it's going to be challenging, and we're seeing what Ohio State is spending, obviously, to try to go win the Big Ten in 24. So, and Oregon too, and all these teams that are coming in. So it's going to be a challenging year for Michigan, but you kind of understand why it feels like the right thing to do.
Max, this is all for different reasons, and this is more of just a note that we heard earlier, but 3 of the 4 playoff coaches are no longer at their schools. That's just kind of the wild world of college football these days, isn't it? And Steve Sarkisian, the last man standing. Would you have Texas along with obviously a Penn State, Ohio State as maybe teams that benefit most from a Harbaugh going to the NFL? And just your thoughts on, we just had the playoff 3 weeks ago, and there's only one coach that still remains in the game, remains where he was originally.
Yeah, and we've had a few weeks to think about this possibility, and I was talking with one of our editors at The Athletic, kind of trying to look at, hey, what was the last time somebody played for a national championship and then bailed, because obviously that's now the case with Harbaugh and DeBoer, and there's really not much of a history of that. In fact, the last one to win it all was Tom Osborne, retiring after his 97 in Nebraska, and the last one to play in one and then leave was Chip Kelly. So there's really, people probably forget, but yeah, it's we don't see this very often, and I think it's especially as we go into a year where it's going to feel a little bit more unpredictable with a 12-team playoff and more people having an opportunity to compete for playoff wins and a national championship and all that. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, I think Oregon is a beneficiary going into the Big Ten as a program that is, got a lot coming back and has got some studs with Dylan Gabriel and Evan Stewart and a lot of great players coming in there. I think you feel pretty good about your chance to go compete in the Big Ten right away if Michigan's a little bit weaker. And they already were going to be with the players they're losing to the NFL draft and needing a new quarterback and all that kind of stuff. But I think them and Texas and Ole Miss and some of these programs that are certainly gearing up to make a run here. You're not upset about what's going on in Michigan, but certainly I think this also, man, I'm sure you guys have talked about it plenty, but man, we are just setting up for just an extremely dramatic year at Ohio State because the expectations could not be higher. And it's Ryan Day with what they've brought in, and then to also go make the interesting decision of bringing in Bill O'Brien. It really is a championship or bust kind of year for Ryan Day, not just the Big Ten, but they need to be probably a Final Four team in 24. And so with Harbaugh gone, that doesn't mean that Ohio State's just going to run through the Big Ten, but certainly it raises the expectations even higher that this needs to be Ryan Day's best season yet at Ohio State.
Max, you have become really, really strong when it comes to following the transfer portal. Which, of course, is an everyday deal. And, again, today some guys decided they weren't going to enter the portal after they were or whatever. Is it more than you could have ever imagined? And it's probably not going to change much, whatever the decisions down the road of what people can or cannot do. Is it even more than you could have comprehended?
It is, yeah. And, I've looked at this, you think back a couple months ago, I feel it really wasn't that long ago, when you had the decision out of West Virginia that really kind of put the one-time transfer rule on pause, and then the NCAA came out and said that, really for this whole portal cycle that there would not be a one-time transfer rule, that there's unlimited transfers. The effect of that is pretty obvious. At this point in time, compared to, on this date last year, transfers in terms of FBS scholarship transfers in college football are up 20%. And so that number just keeps going up every year, and it's not surprising, but we're seeing another jump in this off season already. And part of that is just that players know they can transfer as many times as they want, and kind of are making the assumption that will be the case going forward here. And I think when you see some of the stuff in this cycle that's been surprising to me, one of them is you are seeing a lot of teams just kind of dump the transfers that didn't work out, and that's not really been the case in the past year. But if you have unlimited transfers, if you have kind of more of a free agent setup, that's going to be the case. And then we're already, in the past couple of weeks, as you guys have seen, all of these true freshmen, early enrollees that are already leaving places like Alabama and Washington. These guys are, if we're in a world with one-time transfers, these guys would not be doing that. They would not be burning their one transfer after a couple of weeks in college. But I think that is kind of a sign of what may come here. If student athletes kind of feel like, okay, the rules probably, we're not going to get this back in the tube here, and you can transfer as many times as you want. They're kind of already acting that way. And so you get it. I mean, you get, certainly coaching changes factor into that big time and change, what you think is going to go on. But it's just getting the number of players transferring is just getting bigger every year. And, the rules are not going to change that. It's going to keep going the other way. And so, it's a lot to follow. And it's depending on your perspective, it's either exciting or frustrating. But no, it's definitely grown more than I expected, for sure.
Max, the only way I can see it ever effectively changing would be, this Charlie Baker, proposed new world NCAA structure where you have a calendar that right now would not make sense. Like there would be things happening in April that normally wouldn't happen in April. There would be, you might be signing your recruits in June or something like that because that's the only month that it makes sense anymore. Like that's the only thing I can see is radically changing it, employment model and all that. Like otherwise it's just going to keep being chaos.
Yeah, I mean, I think, people have kind of been joking or hinting about this for years, but I mean, we are creeping towards just the reality of like, look, if you want the player movement to stop or slow down, then the only way to do that is employment contracts that guarantee that they're going to be with the school for a certain period of time. That's really all you can do because the courts and DOJ and all that are not going to back you up if you're the NCAA in terms of transfer restrictions. That's very clear at this point. So if Charlie Baker can create this new model here, I'm sure they will try to address that. But I mean it's hard to control. And guys, I'm sure you've looked this up, but I mean, a year from now, the national championship game is on January 20th.
Yes.
So what is that going to mean for January and February in this sport and the portal and player movement and coach movement and all that? I mean, I think we are setting up for this to be something that stretches far beyond just December here next year.
So, Max, Will Rogers decides after talking to Jed Fish and probably, looking around the landscape that he's going to decide to stay at Washington. What's still out there on the bone? What kind of meat is there out there if there are more coaching changes or guys are still looking around when it comes to quarterback and just the remaining players in the portal? Have all the big names kind of decided at this point, or what are you still eyeing?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the best available players, I think the best one out there at this point is probably Jabbar Muhammad, the cornerback from Washington, who was a starter at Oklahoma State, grad transferred to Washington to play corner for the Huskies defense this last season, and was one of the best corners in the Pac-12 and really in the country. And so for him, it's Alabama, it's Texas, it's Oregon. He's kind of the last big one kind of out there right now. I don't think there's going to be big attrition for Michigan. I'd be surprised. But yeah, he's the big one out there. And then certainly in terms of the quarterback market, with Will Rogers staying put at Washington, which makes sense. I mean, that's not really surprising if Noah Fafita is staying in Arizona. I don't think if you're Jed Fish and you've already lost Washington's two freshman quarterbacks out of the program too. I think Will Rogers is definitely your best bet out there. But there's Jaden DeLora, who's available again after leaving Texas State. There's Jordan McLeod, the Sun Belt Player of the Year, who was at James Madison this last season. But really, other than that, there's not much out there in terms of starting quarterbacks, guys that have been full or full season or multi-year starters. It's mostly settled, and especially when you have kind of these ad drop deadlines and stuff like that at these schools. A lot of this stuff has to be figured out now. So yeah, we've the market is mostly cleared up, but certainly late coaching changes have shaken things up a little bit this month.
What is Hugh Freeze's plan at quarterback? I know that Peyton Thorne is still there, but they were underwhelming at that position this year.
It's a great question, and that is if you go through who's going where. Auburn is the one that I just really still put a question mark next to, and it's unclear kind of what was the plan there. I think they were certainly in the market for a quarterback and for a QB1. They've got a few guys in their room, and obviously you can have competition and hope for improvement there. They've got some young guys in the program in addition to Thorne. But yeah, I think when Caden Salter, the Cedar Hill grad from Liberty, who had a spectacular year for Liberty, when he went in the portal, I'm sure a lot of people just assumed he was going to Auburn. And instead he pulled out of the portal and stayed at Liberty. And so I would imagine he was probably on Hugh Freeze's radar. I imagine there were quite a few quarterbacks. I heard even before this started, I heard a lot of speculation that Riley Leonard would be the guy for Auburn as a guy that's a Alabama native. And then, Notre Dame swooped in and picked him up. So I don't know if I don't know who that's going to be for Auburn. And, we were saying the same thing last year, and they ended up getting Peyton Thorne in the spring. So they may be in that position again where that's like kind of the one school that's a little bit unresolved at the quarterback position going into into April when the portal opens again.
Max, I know we don't have much more time with you, but it's great to always have you on. But what in the world of the confusion at Texas State with GJ bringing in DeLaura, and then all of a sudden TJ Finley, who was really good last year, Baylor knows that, and then all of a sudden he's gone, Hornsby's gone, and now DeLaura's gone.
Yeah, and TJ Finley, going to Western Kentucky, a place where he can obviously continue to put up big numbers. I think that the Jaden DeLaura story, it's a very complicated one. And, quite frankly, when the news came out about, what alleged to occur when he was in high school, that probably should have been a little bit bigger story nationally and just kind of wasn't. But it's certainly out there, and it's troubling for sure. And I think I kind of figured, you expected he would go in the portal after Noah Fafita took over, as a redshirt freshman for Arizona. But I did think it would probably make it difficult for him to find somewhere else to go. GJ Kinney and Craig Sussman really bet on him. And then Craig Sussman left to go be the OC at San Jose State. So I think it's just a very complicated deal, and it did not work out for GJ Kinney. And, I don't know the order of operations there in terms of was Finley already leaving or not. I truly don't know. But certainly it's a messy deal there. And, Texas State is, after an excellent season for that program in year one under Kinney, and they've got to figure out what they're doing at quarterback there. But, that is a portal story that did not work out very well, it seems.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Keep doing what you do. Senior college football writer for theathletic.com. I think that with combination